Okay, hello everyone. So I continue with the research theme that Josh Brown started here. So I'm telling about some services that we have provided or we have for research data, including Mydata and personal data. And so my name is Antti Pursula. I'm from CSC, so a colleague of Paula. A bit different things we are doing actually. So yeah, so I try to introduce the topic briefly first. So the area that I'm talking about is basically health and well-being, so biomedical research, and we it's widely recognized that biomedical research would benefit enormously from getting all of the health and well-being data that is around and in different places for the benefit of research, and this would have then great promise for let's say personalized medicine, how to tailor treatments for different diseases and for individuals, develop new types of cure and I mean understand the causes of diseases, improving quality of life. So it's certainly a very beneficial activity for the individual and for the society. But the data that could be used for this is something that let's say individuals collect from themselves. They have mobile phones or some health applications or you name it, and then there is a registers some people, there are health records and everything like that. So very clearly this is not data that would be taken lightly and put out on public for researchers to access. And everybody understands that there are a lot of concerns and a lot of ethical and social and legal requirements that need to be taken into account when utilizing or bringing this data for the benefit of society. It is of course in majority and really most of the cases that the data is de-identified. So when it's used for research, it doesn't say that this is about, or that the name of the person is not there, or the address, the social security number. That's not usually interesting for the researchers. So we de-identify, or the researchers de-identify the data. But still it's possible to connect this data to an individual if you have enough information, enough attributes, then you actually know that it cannot be anyone else than this one person, my neighbor. Yeah. So a lot of requirements need to be taken into account. And I'm now talking about mainly on how to implement them on the IT side, from the technology side. So the lawmakers are making regulations, and there is a lot of discussion on that, what are the ethics and so on. And then from the IT side, we want to implement those in the most secure way possible. I see only blank screen. Yeah. So, okay, I basically said it already that there needs to be these secure services that really implement the use of personal data for research. And to try to open up a little bit what I'm talking about here, I drafted this kind of a use case that is a possible, realistic use case, but it's not a specific one which I would say that this organization is using. But basically think about this kind of process that we have a data collecting organization like a biobank or a register authority or a genome center storing a lot of genome data from individuals, and they are willing to open this for research. And in second step, the data about the information or data sets that's available, metadata that's published, and the researcher goes in and wants to use some of those. And requests for access. The next thing is that there is a review process depending on the type of data, ethical review maybe and so on. And if there is approval, then the data would be prepared, the particular data set that the researcher wants to use, prepared, de-identified, and moved into a secure environment so that the researchers can access it, but it's not leaking out or going into hard drives or so on of individual researchers. Then researchers do the analysis, and then after the project, the access to the data is closed down. And now coming to the kind of what we have done at CSC to support this kind of research workflow. I'm introducing 3 different separate service components. There is a tool for digital authorization management. So this is the step when the researcher applies for a specific data set permission to use it. Then there is the review process, approval or asking for more information or declining. And this REMS tool can handle this process. No. Okay, I get some kind of a warning here, but it's not visible to you, so no problem. No. Then, yeah. Okay, thanks. Secure cloud infrastructure called CSC ePorta, so that would be the safe processing environment for the data where the researchers can access it. And then a human-centric identity and access management scheme, Eduni ID, IDs that then can be used to record the, let's say, consents from people, for example, and anyway identify individuals. And yeah, I have mentioned that we are really doing this in context of international collaboration. So it's when there is need to share data or compare the international ones, we have the standards there. It's done together. So I'm going to take a side step here to say why these services should be provided by CSC, because maybe not everyone is familiar with CSC, although most of the audience is from CSC, so you can also ask your neighbor. Yeah, so CSC, IT Center for Science, is a government-owned non-profit organization in Finland. Mission is to provide IT services for research and education. And some of them, the service areas or topics are listed here, like research data, cloud, supercomputing, identity management, higher education data management, and so on. So we do a lot of stuff, about 300 people working on these topics. And why CSC looks to be a suitable player to provide these kind of services. We have the data that's stored with us is only at our servers, our storage, our locations. We don't outsource it to commercial players, or the data of course stays in EU, in Finland actually. We don't have commercial interest on the data. We make our best to provide a secure setting to store data from the organizations and customers. CSC is publicly owned, so if something goes really bad, then the voters have at least some chance to influence, close down the full place or something like that. So I think this is very well suitable for implementing something like research data bank, that is a term used in the Mydata community, and or something like what's mentioned in the national strategies and so on, like secure analysis environment, genome center, data store, or so on. Okay, but I'll just use a couple of more minutes to introduce with 1 or 2 slides those services that I mentioned before, and then I think in the workshop I'm very interested to hear about your comments or what kind of services one would need for data. Yes, briefly about the authorization management tool, REMS. Basically, it provides a complete process for managing the entitlements of how to use data. This is actually a rather simple workflow. It can implement much complicated ones as well, much more complicated ones. There is also a demo service available, so if you go there and you need to read the instructions, and then you can log in and test this system on different roles. But basically, what it implements is that a researcher wants to apply for access on a certain resource. It can be data. And then there is for each data set or for each resource, there is a defined process of how this is then handled, the request. So there may be several steps of approvals or reviews. And the REMS system sends reminders and sends the reviews for, or the application to reviewers so that they can take action, and all of this is logged into the system. And finally also the entitlements, so the authorizations are stored in the system so that the service can read and know if this certain identity is connected with a permission to use a specific service. Then the secure processing environment, CSC ePortal, cloud computing environment, which is actually completely isolated from the general internet. So that's how we managed to get the certification for elevated information security regulations and also the ISO 27K. So the idea is that we take a part of the cloud infrastructure. That will be a private virtual cluster for customer, and only the customer can access this with a dedicated connection. We don't know what is inside this virtual cluster. Also, other users on the same platform are completely isolated from the section that is given for a specific organization. This is, well, yeah, the diagram how it works, indeed. And then I'll say a few words about the human-centric identity and access management. So we all have digital identities in different ecosystems or different silos. There is the work account, organizational directory, maybe a federation, a commercial identity, I mean in a Facebook and so on. But what happens if you move your employment to another place? Some of your digital identity is left behind, so that it's difficult to move the data around. So, and also, as also Jos was saying, you need to maintain several identities. So in Eduni, human-centric identity access management scheme, it is a digital identity that is created by the person himself or herself and then manage it. And the following slide explains that the individual can select which sign-in methods to use to access your own personal digital identity. And then services, on the other hand, can use this identity for their services. And there are lot of different features in this system that can kind of enhance the use of it. Basically, it implements a Mydata operator, a crucial role there to handle the identities of digital identities of individuals. Actually, the real expert on this Eduni ID is Sami Saarikoski from CSC, so he's here in the front row. So he will be with me in the group works. So if you have questions on this side of the presentation, we have an expert to answer on those. So let's take a brief summary. I think I used my 10 minutes also already, two times maybe. So what I'm actually talking about is you could say it is a data platform or part of a data platform for sensitive data. Something that can support several processes: submission, archiving, sharing, data processing of also of sensitive data and personal data, and sharing of the data when it is possible. But I also want to emphasize that this is something that an IT provider or IT infrastructure like CSC cannot build ourselves, and that's not our intention, but we want to collaborate, and it needs to be collaboration with the data collecting organizations and research community and IT providers. But we do have these specific components that are already there and can handle also personal data. So here are the contacts, and thank you for your interest. And I think next we will hear from Paula how to organize the workshops or the group works. Thank you.